Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, we're going to go around the table and we're going to introduce ourselves. So I'm Eileen Long, the chairman.
Hi, I'm Lisa Kane, the vice chair.
Laura Hine.
Caprice Edmond.
Nicole Carr. Okay, nice to meet you.
David Kopersky, the school board attorney. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon. I'm Carol Cook.
Great to meet you. Thank you.
And we have some district leaders. We have Dr. Bill Corbett, our deputy superintendent, Jennifer Dull, chief strategy and impact officer, Beth Harradine, director of strategic communication, and we have Michael Vigu and Dr. Dwayne Hines, our area superintendents, and a Jory Spencer, performing arts specialist. Okay, you have 75 minutes for our board interview this afternoon. You will have 3 minutes to provide an opening statement, and then each board member will ask a series of thematically based questions on student achievement, culture, and there's 9 minutes for each section, okay? There is 4 questions. How you respond and how long you take will determine if we'll get through all the questions or not. And you will have time at the end for your final thoughts and then questions for us. Okay? We'll start with giving you the floor for 3 minutes for any opening comments or thoughts you may have.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So good afternoon, and thank you. And I want to do 2 recognitions really quickly, if I may. I do want to recognize my hosts today, Mr. Vigu and Dr. Hines. They have taken great care of me, answered my questions. So I want to definitely say thank you to my new friends there. And I also want to take this opportunity, board members, to recognize you. I know that this is a very important decision, and I think the process that you have been taking has just really been top-notch. I know choosing a superintendent is not an easy task, so I just wanted to recognize you and your hard work on this. I also wanted to thank you, though, for bringing me along in the process. I am a learner at heart. One of the things that I absolutely am committed to is my own learning and growth. I have learned so much through this process, and thank you for that because you've given that opportunity for me, and you just brought me along, and so I appreciate that. I wanted to also start, though, really quickly with sharing a little bit about me personally because that never seems to make the resume. I am one of 4 children born to an enlisted Navy man, and my mom was a CEO of the home for a large majority of my childhood. She actually finally decided to go to work when I was about 10 or 11. And we grew up in southern Spain, my brothers and sisters and I was very fortunate to learn a different language and a different culture, and I feel like those experiences have really impacted some of my life choices. I'm also a wife and a mother. My husband, Steve, is also in education. And we have 2 grown children. They're in Orlando doing their own thing. We're very, very proud of them. And my husband and I have been actually empty nesters for 2 years now. That's been quite a big change. So when I knew that I was going to have an opening remark, an opportunity to share something, I started to think about what was it that you wanted to hear, or what did the public and the community want to know about me? Because I know you're going to have the opportunity to learn more about me through this process and the next two days. And what came to mind of what I thought you might want to know is 2 things. Why did I want to be a superintendent? But also, why Pinellas County? And I want to be a superintendent because I am passionate about student success. I'm passionate about the students. And I believe as a superintendent, that's such an important role to help maintain that focus. One of the things that you'll learn about me is I have that laser focus on student success, but I also have a very strategic approach in how I lead that work to help for student success. And I believe that I'm a change agent for students. And as a superintendent, I know that it's all about that student success, of which I expect to be held accountable as well. And so it's that reason that I am seeking to be a superintendent. The second thing that I wanted to share with you is, why did I choose Pinellas? And so as superintendent positions become available out there, I am looking for the right fit for me as a superintendent, but also the right fit for the community. And when I read the desired qualities on the superintendent search brochure from Pinellas County, I just knew in my heart that I had to apply. Those desired qualities are really all about who I am. It's exactly what I believe, and it's how I lead the work. And so that's why I chose Pinellas County. So I'm looking forward to our dialogue together and getting started.
Start with Dr. Carr.
Okay, hello. I'll be asking questions in the area of student achievement and accountability. What are important elements in an accountability model for a school and a district?
So important elements in an accountability model for a school and a district. I think it would be a variety of data points, right? It would be student assessment data. It would be formative assessment data. It would be how our progress is towards reaching our strategic goals in our district strategic plan. It could be how we're meeting the expectations, also culture and climate survey data, right? So when our communities are sharing with us that they have specific needs, what's our progress towards that, right? So we want to look at a variety of data points because it's not just one key data point that tells the picture. I'm a firm believer in accountability, but I believe that there's multiple facets that contribute towards that. And so sometimes it is more of that quantitative accountability data pieces, but also sometimes it's that qualitative piece as well. When you walk onto a school or when you come into a district, you can feel what that culture is like. You can feel if there's progress. You can you have that sense of what's working. I had the opportunity this morning to spend a lot of time with our team members, and you can feel the strong culture and that there is high expectations and high accountability.
Okay, thank you. How will you work with the leadership in Tallahassee to support the development of an accountability model?
Okay, thank you for the question. That's a great question. I think the first thing, as a superintendent, I know that becoming active and legislative opportunities and sessions is critical. I've been very fortunate in my current role to have been included in weekly phone calls during the legislative process. So we were able to hear, as a leadership team, we were able to hear firsthand what's happening up in Tallahassee with some of those legislative priorities. The first thing that I would do is work with my 7 school board members. I want to hear from each of you what it is that you feel would be components of that accountability model. What's important to us as a school district? What's important to our community? And then from there, I would also work with the various departments in our district as well, looking to see what their input is, what has worked in their experiences, what has not worked, what are some of those successes of accountability models that have worked, and how can we help provide information to the legislators of what that looks like so that we're building on past successes. I'm a big believer in that as well, is how can we learn of what we've done well and build on that for the future. I would make sure that I'm also, when I'm meeting with those departments, it's not just teaching and learning, it's not just one isolated department, but meeting with representatives from every department. I think there's also value in, at the end, rather than just in silos, is bringing them all together, such as we're in here today, right? So that each of those representatives from the different departments can also hear the rationale and thinking from the individuals from the other departments as well. I think that provides for that transparent communication, and it helps to kind of build that background and understanding of where the direction might be going. And then I also want to make sure that we would consider our families and our community partners. What do our local businesses think accountability should look like? What do our colleges and universities think that that should look like? And taking all of that into consideration and putting all of that together, and then again, bringing that back to the school board members, right? And working with each of you and saying, okay, here's what we're hearing. I almost envision this as a school improvement cycle model, right? Where we're gathering all of the information, but then as a team together with your guidance, what does that look like? And so once we develop that, then my role would be to actively work with the other superintendents in the state of Florida, as well as the legislators at Tallahassee, to present that and advocate on behalf of the students of Pinellas County, but also us as a district.
Thank you. How will you support schools in the understanding of the new accountability model?
So I look at this question as, how do we help our school leaders understand the new accountability model? So that takes me to how people learn, right? I think that, I know that the research says about how people learn, and people have to have background knowledge, right? And they also have to connect to their current understanding. So when I would help lead the team to help our principals understand the new accountability model, I would definitely have some opportunities for us to talk about what the model that we're familiar with looked like, right? And then making those connections to the new school accountability model, all of those features, so that they can see how they're the same, but also how they're different. So just because they're different doesn't mean that they won't understand it. But as long as they can articulate the same, how it's the same and different, then we have, the research shows that we have a better understanding of how making that connection and how our principals would understand that new accountability model. This is going to take a lot of time, right? It's definitely a new model, something that is going to be a challenge. So I also would want to build in regular time for us to continue to revisit that, to continue to use their data, to also look to see how does their data fit into that model so that they can clearly see it. Again, going back to how do we teach, right? Teachers do a lot of think alouds or a lot of modeling. So if we use our own data at the school sites and we plug that into what that new accountability model will look like, our school leaders will have a better understanding of understanding what the data is saying and what direction we're going into, but they'll also be able to then use that to then create or adapt any specific strategies or changes at their school to help further acceleration of students and student success.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next section. I will be doing the 4 questions. Culture that promotes learning in a safe environment. How do you ensure climate assessment results are used in school improvement planning across the district?
Could you repeat that one more time?
How do you ensure climate assessment results are used in school improvement planning across the district?
That's a great question. Climate and culture right now is so critical, I think, everywhere. It's one of my passion areas because over the years I've learned that culture is instrumental to moving forward. So that's a great question. Thank you. How I would make sure that the climate assessment data is used is I envision this as part of our framework. So when we create school improvement plans with specific goals, what's the framework that we're giving to our school leaders for them to develop that? We need to include that just as we include our student assessment data they go through that process of analyzing that data, we need to give them the framework of what does that look like using our climate survey data. And so they could use that same process to then determine where's their biggest needs based on the climate survey data. And so again, if they have that framework, they can know that that's one of their first steps that they want to implement. And then helping them go through that same process of identifying what that root cause is for that data, finding the barrier. This is one of my passion areas, is drilling down into the data to finding what is the actual cause of that data point. Because if we don't find the actual root cause or the barrier, then we won't be able to choose the right strategies. And so again, I think that should be in that framework for school improvement plans. And then we would need to make sure that our school administrators that are building these school improvement plans have a resource or a toolkit of evidence-based research strategies that will work to address those particular climate goals that they'll then set based on that data. And to monitor that needs to be on a regular basis. I've always looked at school improvement plans as a fluid document. They should be used throughout the whole process. So in my experience, in my past, what I've done with whether I'm supervising principals or whether I'm supervising let's just say the K-12 reading plan at the district level, is we bring that out. We monitor that either on a monthly basis, sometimes a quarterly basis. It depends on what particular plan. But that's got to be involved in our work on a regular basis to say, if this is what we said that is needed to address these particular gaps or deficit areas or areas that, maybe of acceleration even, then how are we performing? Are we executing what we said we were going to do? And what are those results? And if those results aren't what we're getting or not what we want to see, then what are we going to do about it, right? And so if we don't go through that process, then it's just a pretty document, and we don't want a pretty document sitting on a shelf, right? We really want something created that's going to make change.
Okay. Describe how you have handled a situation where an employee was failing to perform at the expected levels.
So, this is always a difficult one. I am a big believer in setting people up for success. I think I mentioned that on my video as well. So one thing that I'll tell you up front that I like to do with all of my employees is I actually have an entrance interview, if you will, or an entrance meeting. Maybe interview's too formal. But I have an entrance opportunity where I review with that person what those expectations are. So if this is your role, let's just say a principal, I'll use that as an example. If you're the principal, these are the expectations of that particular position, and this is what it looks like. And then have the conversation to say, for you to be successful, what do you need? Maybe they don't have a lot of experience in budget, right? So let's push in some people from finance and provide them some one-on-one training. So I wanted to start with saying that because I am a true believer in entrance meetings to set them up for success. But sometimes you're going to have employees who aren't going to meet those expectations. And so what I do first is I try to first have some coaching conversations with that individual. I try to look at what the data is and, again, go back to those job descriptions or job responsibilities and align that and have conversations about what's working and what's not working and talk about what strategies they've tried. I really try to do that in a coaching capacity in the beginning. If the employee fails to respond, then I have to move to something more explicit, more direct. I've actually created what I call coaching and support plans in 2 different districts. We needed a framework of what that looked like. And so a more formalized process would be a specific coaching and support plan. And that is where I specifically, for this one that I'm thinking, I specifically outlined what those deficits were. The data that I used in this particular example, without giving away too much information, is I used climate survey data from the staff. I had already also conducted some focus groups with the staff. I actually worked with the union at that point to also hear some of their concerns that had gone to them as well. And so I really tried to gather the actual data and make it so it's less subjective. So here's the data, right? And so then setting up a very specific plan with specific strategies to address those deficits. We might take one or two. In this case, I took two things at one time. We don't want to overwhelm a person, right? But identifying what are the two big wins right now? What are the two things where the principal could be successful or the employee could be successful, but also that we have some time where we can, that particular strategy is something that needs to happen right away to make big change for the staff.
Okay, next question. What are the benefits and drawbacks to schools having autonomy from each other? What is the appropriate level of the autonomy versus district processes and procedures?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
What
Chair
are the
Long?
benefits and drawbacks of school having autonomy from each other? And what is the appropriate level of autonomy versus district processes and procedures?
That is a great.
We have 2 minutes left for this
Oh,
section.
okay.
So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. That is a great question. Benefits for autonomy is it empowers leaders, and I'm all about empowering leaders. It makes them feel that they have a say and that they're leaders, that they're valued. And when we give them autonomy, that goes a long way. It helps them also with their own culture and climate because, again, it helps their self-efficacy, their confidence. So I think that that's one of the big benefits of allowing schools to have autonomy. Some of the drawbacks is consistency, right? So what one school might do, what one school leader might do, or a district department leader might do, another one might not be doing, and that can cause some challenges, miscommunications with consistency of what's happening in our schools and districts.
Okay. We're going to go on to Ms. Edmond.
I will be asking you questions related to equity with excellence for all. How do you balance the need for educational equity with the current public criticism of equity?
That's a great question. Thank you for the question. I'm an advocate for students. I have seen and myself experienced times when not all opportunities have been shared with students. And so my commitment is always going to be to doing what each child needs. And if they need access to rigorous coursework or supports to be successful in specific coursework or specific experiences or opportunities even. You know, a lot of times we talk about coursework, but what about clubs? What about events and activities and groups? So I'm always going to be an advocate for what students need and giving all students the opportunity. Doesn't mean they have to take it, right, but the opportunity. But your question is, how do we go about that with some of the criticism that we're hearing? And I think that I think the community and business partners and parents, they are great partners and want what's best for their students. What I've learned over the time is that we are educators. We went to school, right? We became the experts in education, and others in the community, they're experts in other areas, and they have amazing skills to contribute to our community, and that's what makes Pinellas so great. I think one of the things that we can do is to have honest, open communication, transparent communication about the why of what we're doing this, and helping them understand, helping them see the data of why we need to do this, why do we need to progress into this, sharing specific examples with them. I think if we communicate openly and transparently, I know that people will start to see the why and understand that. And so that's how I would address those that are criticizing equity right now, is really just taking the time, whether it's in a one-on-one forum or whether it's in a small group or a town hall meeting, but educating the public about the need and why we're doing it and what that looks like too, right? I feel like if they also have an understanding of what it really looks like, then that would help them see the importance and the value in what we're doing for students.
The next question is, how do you balance the needs of special populations such as ESE students, ELL students, and students traditionally referred to as gifted and talented? What have you done to address the diverse needs of the student populations in your district?
Thank you for the question. Again, so balancing the needs comes down to a lot of different areas that you need to consider. What resources do you have available, and what resources do these particular students need? It really comes down to which students are enrolled in your school, but also monitoring that, because we know that the needs of students change over time, and so does enrollment. So really having regular conversations about your student population and how that changes over time, and going back to your allocations for your schools, what's being provided to you to help support the needs of those particular students, and then looking at your master schedule and looking at how you're using that, right? And what I have particularly done to balance, to help with some of these, the needs of the diverse learners, well, so one thing that I've done in the past is when I was getting my doctorate in curriculum and education, it was an emphasis in special education, and I became aware of something called a co-teach model in special education, and I explored that and was very highly interested in that, and actually that ended up being what my dissertation was about co-teaching. And I actually brought co-teaching to a school at the middle school level. And so we had a co-teach opportunity in math, middle school mathematics, and middle school English language arts, where we had a certified special education teacher, exceptional student education teacher, and a certified math teacher. And they had common planning time, where they planned high-quality lessons for those needs of those particular students, and they delivered instruction together. And I made sure that the model wasn't where the exceptional student education teacher was just in the room and pulling students. That's not what it looked like. So they needed a lot of training up front about what a true co-teach model looked like. So that's one specific example for our students with special needs. The other thing that I've actually done is I've looked at some of our students. Our ELL students are one of them, and actually also some students in the exceptional student education program as well. Kind of goes back to your earlier question a little bit. So a lot of times these students aren't afforded opportunities to take higher level coursework. And so in Orange County and then again in Clark County, I rolled out a middle school mathematics acceleration program that really targeted students that were in minority subgroups that typically, traditionally, weren't invited to take advanced or honors mathematics courses. And we also looked at some of those students that would be a good fit for this course that were also in the exceptional student education program. And we launched this middle school mathematics with the intent of closing some of their skill gaps, but also making sure that they were taking Algebra 1 and finishing Algebra 1 by 8th grade. And unfortunately, with COVID, we didn't get the data results from Clark County, but I can tell you in Orange County, when that was launched, we had a 100% pass rate of Algebra 1 end-of-course exams for these students.
Thank you. Should you become the next superintendent, what intentional measures will you take to ensure that all existing students, faculty, and staff, as well as students of the future, will be exposed to a system that is dedicated to excellence and equity.
Can you repeat that one more time,
Yes.
just to make sure I have it?
Should you become the next superintendent, what intentional measures will you take to ensure that all existing students, faculty, and staff, as well as students of the future, will be exposed to a system that is dedicated to excellence and equity? This is the last question.
Okay, thank you.
2 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. So I think this comes, to me, this is a strategic plan. That is the system that I would use to measure whether or not all students have that system of excellence, because in there are some great strategies, and I know that we've developed that here based on needs, so based on data, but based on also, again, I think qualitative data can't be forgotten. We're in the business of people, so I think it's taking both of those together and creating very specific, strategic, aligned key strategies or action steps that are aligned to increasing those equitable opportunities for our current students and our future students. And so if that's what we're putting in place and we're spending a lot of time developing, then again, we have to go back to ensuring that we're checking in on those goals. Do we have somebody that's assigned to those and that's regular monitoring them? But is that data being shared? Because that's critical as well, right? So is that data, or what are the results on those key action strategies and action steps? And if it's working, then we continue in that progress. But if not, we have to make adjustments along the way. Otherwise, we're not doing what's right for our students.
Mrs. Kay?
Thank you so much. Hello? Am I on?
No?
No.
I'm still on.
You're still on. Is it working? There we go. Ooh, sorry. Thank you very much. So I'm going to be asking you a couple of questions on career and college readiness. Can you please give examples of previous efforts and involvement with career technical education, dual enrollment, and other specialized programs such as this? What have you initiated to improve and expand these programs?
So thank you for the question. So a couple of things that come to mind. In Clark County, Nevada, I supervised 41 schools, K-12. And one of the things that we noticed is that we had some career technical schools, but we wanted to increase our CTE coursework at the high school level so that students had more opportunity. We also noticed that there was high transiency rate, though, in Clark County. So we met as feeder schools. So we had the middle schools and the high schools, but we also included elementary, especially in one particular area, because we had some magnet schools already there. And so we wanted to build and capitalize on what were the needs of that particular community, right? And so we wanted to create a pipeline of adding additional CTE coursework at the schools, but also that it made sense within that feeder pattern. And then even though there was high transiency rate, we were able to track these students. And what was interesting is oftentimes they were transient, but they just kind of kept going back and forth to the same couple of areas. And that really was helpful because we were able to be strategic and say, we can offer these particular CTE courseworks because if they move, then there's the greater likelihood that they can continue with that coursework, which is really important because we want them to have those skills and that opportunity. So we were able to meet as, like I said, in feeder patterns to work that out. We also incorporated in our elementary schools. We weren't quite ready yet to launch those at the elementary schools, But one particular area, what those feeder schools did was the elementary schools met with the middle schools and the high schools, and they began to incorporate in their current curriculum some of those components that when the students ended their elementary school career, they would see that at middle school and high school. So we were already laying that foundation for them about what CTE looked like and the opportunities that they might have. It was a really creative way to do that, and that actually launched, they actually launched their own little consortium. So it was a great result. The other thing that we added at some of our high schools was we added pre-AP courses, which was new to Clark County. We had our AP courses mostly in 11th and 12th grade, but when I talked with high school principals, they realized that when those students were enrolled in AP classes, our enrollment numbers were increasing because that was one of our goals and strategies. But what we noticed is the pass rate on those exams was not really where we wanted it to be. And so we worked together and collaborated and talked about different ways that we could support those students. And we came up with two ways. One is we started pushing in some additional support into those current AP classes so that we continued helping the particular students that were currently enrolled. But then the other thing that we decided to do was to add pre-AP coursework to ninth graders so that they're beginning to be exposed to that AP curriculum, that critical thinking, the reasoning, the debates, right? Learning all of those skills before they actually get into AP. And so we added those as freshmen so that when they got into 10th grade or 11th grade, the probability that they would have more success in advanced placement was there.
Thank you. What would be your vision for Pinellas County Schools career and college readiness programming within the next 5 years if you were to be chosen?
So this is a hard question for me. And you're going to find I'm very transparent because I have a belief about education. I'm passionate about public education. I know all kids can learn with the right supports. And I hope this doesn't hurt me, but I don't have a vision. I'm not one of those that comes in and says, this is what we're going to do. So I want to start with saying that. I believe that this is a team decision, and with me coming in as a new superintendent, you all know the district better, so, and the staff does as well, so I would want to rely on them to really create that vision. But I'm going to answer your question. One of the things that I would like to see, you have an excellent CTE program, excellent opportunities for students at the middle and high school level, and what I see in the strategic plan is this direction, and I actually had the opportunity to talk with some folks this morning. I would want to start embedding and building in elementary the opportunity for students to see what that looks like. Not necessarily required, but just exposing them to what that could be, right? And then AVID would be the other one that I would add. I've actually had the experience of adding AVID at elementary, and boy, if we could get that foundation down in elementary, think about how much, students would really be able to perform even that much further if we get that foundation. It's always about that foundation, right? So that would be my vision, but again, I would do that with the team.
Okay, thank you. How would you expand our local partnerships to support and enhance our current CTE programs?
That's a great question as well. One of the things that I believe in is we're a K-12, actually probably VP K-12 now, right? System, but just because they graduate doesn't mean that it's over, right? There's still more to come. And we do a really good job as educators building in the appropriate pipelines, if you will, of what our students need to be successful in whatever path that they choose, whether it's college, career, or life, right? But it's that local partner piece that's really critical. So Pinellas has some great business and organizations, right? They're in that field, and they have a perspective of the type of employees that they are hiring or merchants that are coming to their areas. They can see it from a very unique perspective. They know firsthand what's needed, right? I don't want to use the word lacking, but what are some areas of opportunities is what I would say. And by sitting down with our local organizations and partners, we could really capitalize on that and use their perspective and knowledge to strengthen what we already have. You all have done incredible work. We've got some really strong programs, but how can we build and strengthen those? And I think those local partners could really add some valuable insight and give us a perspective that we don't have because we don't, well, some might own a local business or out there, but how can we build on that, if you will?
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on. Ms. Hine?
Thank you. Dr. Hembrook, I'm going to be asking you questions around effective and efficient use of resources. First, from a district perspective, if you could explain how student performance standards affect planning and prioritizing of facilities, fiscal, technological, human resource projects, all the areas that we have to resource. So how that student performance standards affect your planning and prioritizing of the various areas. And then also in difficult times, how you would prioritize additions or cuts to the budget.
Okay. So I feel like a broken record, but it's all about students. So we have to first start with what do students need to know and be able to do for them to be successful. And so as a district, the different departments, and especially school board members and teaching and learning, we have to articulate what it is that our students need. What programs do they need? What do they have to demonstrate? How are they going to demonstrate that? What supports will they need along the way? So we really, it's almost like I picture it as a blueprint, right, of a house. This is what it needs to look like, right? And then you go through your list of steps and certifications, and so what I would do with that is then, based on the needs of what programs we need, it comes down to even what does the facility look like? Do we need to add a kitchen somewhere for a new culinary program if that's the demand? You take all of those and then you work with those different departments in human resources and operations, and you look to see, okay, what do we already have? Do we have to move some things around first? Is that a possibility, right, rather than starting from scratch? And then from there we prioritize and we look at our budgets. Everything should align and come back to student standards and student success, everything that we do. Right? We have to have safe environments. We have to have efficient buildings and schools. All of that is true. Because if they don't have those, the environments that are conducive to learning, then they're not going to learn. They need to be pride. They need to have pride about their school buildings and their facilities as well. Otherwise, attendance can suffer, and we don't want that either. So everything really needs to align to what are we doing for students? And so that's what I would make sure and work with those different departments. But again, include board members through that process as well, because you all represent certain schools out there and certain areas and certain communities, and so you also have that perspective as well. The next part of your question was, how would I, during difficult times, prioritize those budget cuts? Again, I'm going to go back to Vice Chair Kane's question. I would never do this in isolation. That's not the way that I work, right? But things that kind of go through my head first are, what are some openings there that we have an opportunity to capitalize on before we would cut programs or cut people, right? So, for example, in my experience, one of the things that we were doing was we were attritioning out some paraprofessionals. And so as people retired or moved on or resigned, we just simply didn't fill that position. We just moved some things around. And what's nice about that is you're still saving funds and saving some efficiency there, but you're not hurting people. You're not cutting people, and you're not cutting programs for kids. So that's kind of where I would start with that. But again, I wouldn't do that in isolation.
Thank you. Tell us about a recent large critical budgetary decision that you made. What was the situation? What decision did you make? Who did you involve? Any analysis or information to support that decision-making process? And then what was the impact of your decision, whether it was positive or negative or intended or unintended consequences?
So
A recent large critical budget decision you've had to make, and the situation, how it unfolded, what that decision was, factors you took into consideration, and how it worked out in the end. Sometimes it doesn't go the way we hope. Sometimes it does.
right. So I'm going to use my recent experience of looking at purchasing multi-tiered systems of supports interventions for K-5. So one of the things that I do as an area superintendent is the elementary education department also falls under me, and under there are other various programs as well. One of them is, it falls under elementary, is our interventions. So when we have students, and we tier them in the school systems, and I'm sorry you know this, we look to see what do all students need, right? So we have some students that are on grade level or even above grade level, but they still need a specific intervention to help continue and accelerate that growth, right? Then we have some students that need more specific supports, and they need different kinds of interventions. So what I noticed when I got to Marion County was our response to those interventions was not really where it should be. And so I launched a group to determine why that is. And we wanted to look at why were our kids not responding to that intervention. And so in that committee, it was myself, members of the elementary education department, members of federal grants and programs, and also I included some program specialists from different department areas and principals. And so together what we did was we reviewed the research of our current interventions, and we looked to see what was working based on current research. And then we looked at possibly buying, and here comes the budget piece, Board Member Hine, is we looked at potential other interventions to purchase. And what we found at the end is that as a team, we agreed based on the research that only one of the interventions that we were using was really what we wanted to keep, and we needed to purchase an additional 6 different types of interventions. And that's a large budget purchase, right? That was a critical piece. So we worked with our district leaders. I brought it to executive cabinet. They understand the need and the process of what we took, and so we used some federal grants and program funds to end up purchasing those interventions so that we're doing what's right for students.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So there are many resource investments that drive student learning and student performance, and we know that at the very top is quality, commitment, and joy of teachers. And our responsibility is to recruit and retain and inspire the best and brightest. Share with us what you know about and maybe some thoughts regarding the rapidly rising cost of living in Pinellas County, how we can financially, address that, paralleled with the fact that our state has some of the lowest pay per capita compared to other states, and that piece.
So can you say that one more time? The cost of living?
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
So, again, recruiting, retaining, and inspiring
Sure.
the best and brightest.
Yeah.
Our teachers, the students' experience in the classroom is where the rubber meets the road. And so what do we do about this rapidly rising cost of living, and then where we are with the state of Florida with our teacher pay and such, and just what are some of your thoughts around what we can do there?
Well, I think sometimes it comes down to what funds are available, right, to provide teacher raises or bonuses. I mean, if the money, we have to look at that, right? But I feel like also there's some other opportunities that we can capitalize on to increase how teachers are feeling and increase morale. There's lots of different initiatives that we can implement. And then there's also, and I was talking this morning about this, there might be also in-kind opportunities that we can provide as well, right? So different recognitions and events, opportunities, support, and I think it comes down to what each teacher needs, right? So some teachers, depending on their family situation, it might come down to more basics, whereas others might need recognition. So I read a book a long time ago called the 5 Love Languages. There's actually one about the 5 love languages of work. And wouldn't it be amazing and powerful if we could find out how each of our employees responds? What is it that drives them? When we recognize them at work, some people, it's just a pat on the back, hey, great job. And others, it's more, let's sit down and have some lunch and have an actual conversation. And so I think it's important that we maybe invest some time into finding out what it is that our teachers need and want from them.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to Mrs. Cook.
All right, now we're going to talk about communication and stakeholder engagement.
Oh, thank you.
As soon as the microphone's, there we go. When a new superintendent is hired, you want to make the transition as smooth as possible for everyone. So how would you help both the educational community as well as the community at large adjust to the new governing style that would come with a new superintendent?
So communication is very, very important. So I appreciate that. It's also one of my passions, and I would probably say it's one of my strengths as well. I'm a big communicator. I'm actually going to leave you today with my superintendent entry plan, and in there actually outlines a lot of how I would address this, but I'll go ahead and share that with you as well because the public, well, they'll be able to see it as well. But anyways, I'll just answer the question anyways. So I think frequent dialogue. And so especially as a new superintendent, one of the things that I have in there is that I want regular conversations with you, the school board members, individually, weekly, especially in the beginning if possible, because I have a lot to learn. You all know who some of those educational partners are better than I do. I've done my homework and I know some of them, but you'll be able to kind of give me some feedback, perspectives, and guidance. I also have written in here opportunities to meet with them one-on-one as well, so that I can hear from them directly and talk about what is their current partnership with Pinellas County Schools, and talk about how that's working with them, and just really learning from them. Really, it's about that, is understanding, especially in the first several months. My role is going to really be about understanding what it is that's working, how that's working, what can I do to further that work and maintain that strong partnership. So the way that I look at that is just having, again, that regular conversation and dialogue and transparency about everything that they're doing and that we're doing.
Good, thank you. How would you ensure the school board be informed on important matters? And how would you ensure the public is informed on those important matters? And how do you ensure that staff is informed on important matters?
So in order for us to be successful, we have to have strong, transparent communication, and everyone needs to be on the same page. I'm a believer in no surprises. I do have a friendly face, but I have high expectations, and I am no surprises. So for board members, if I hear of something or I know of something, I would pick up the phone and call you. I would hope that we would develop that kind of relationship where I can pick up the phone and call you anytime, and I would expect the same as well. I want you to hold me accountable as well. So I would definitely make sure that that's happening. I would envision us talking almost daily, really. In regards to parents as well, I think regular opportunities for them to meet me, and again, that actually is in my entry plan as well. Regular opportunities for them to not only meet me, but maintain that relationship. So the way that I see this is I'm going to come in and I would want to do a lot of focus groups or parent meetings, but they would also continue after I've been here, right? They don't just stop just because, oh, it's, 100 days or whatever. Having that open dialogue is going to be important so that they know what we're doing as a school district. I also would consider other ways of communication as well, video formats, newsletters and things. And as for my staff, I would definitely be meeting with them on a regular basis and sharing with them what those expectations are of communication. So when certain situations happen, we would go through, and I would, in the beginning, of course, I would ask them, so how would you normally communicate that? And how has that worked? Again, I'm a big learner and growth person. So I would want to learn from them, how are we doing that right now for our staff? And then just having that all out so we all understand what those expectations are about what should be communicated and when. I will tell you one thing that I've used in a couple of different districts is when we have board requests. So if we're at a work session or a board meeting and you all have a question, we actually jot that down. And so then in executive cabinet, we have our spreadsheet and we have each of the individual questions. So Ms. Edmond, if you asked a question, it's on that spreadsheet, and then we talk about who's going to answer that question for Ms. Edmond. So we make sure that you get your answer. That has worked really, really well.
Good. Thank you. This is a diverse community. So how would you work to ensure that all groups are fully engaged with the schools and the school system as a whole? And how would you work with special interest groups?
So how would I work with diverse population and special interest groups? I value diversity. Obviously, growing up in a different culture, that really has opened my eyes and given me experiences where I can connect with others about how they're feeling, based on their experiences in their own culture. I think one of the things that I've been successful with is when we have families that, for whatever reason, are not engaged, right? And it could be it could be a variety of reasons, right? Is connecting with them on a personal basis in a smaller format first. Sometimes a large room with a lot of people can be overwhelming for our families. But having someone on staff, or I'm not even afraid of myself to do it, is reaching out to them and asking them, what's the barrier? Why aren't you coming? Is it a language barrier? Did they have a bad experience? Do they not feel comfortable? Maybe they don't know that they're welcome. But trying to find out again, I know I mentioned root cause earlier, but what is that root cause about why they're not coming? And then as a district, let's start addressing some of those if they're there, right? So if it's language barriers, do we have interpreters available so that they can understand? Or if they need special seating, can we provide that for them? Maybe they don't think they might have that here. But helping them to understand that they are welcome. Engagement in the community with our stakeholders, our businesses, and our special interest groups is huge. We need them involved in that because they add a specific perspective. And so again, finding out why they're not coming. Thank you.
Oh, you're good.
Oh, I wasn't, it sounded like, okay.
Yeah, no.
Okay. And then special interests as well. Very similarly, meeting with them on an individual basis and talking about what it is that they're seeking and how can we contribute to that. What would that partnership look like together?
Good. Thank you. Okay, what was the role and experience in Did I get it? Okay. We're both confused. What has been your role and experience in working with the legislative delegation? And what would your role be as superintendent in that relationship? 1 minute.
Okay. So I'm going to be a transparent person. My experience in legislative delegation is those weekly phone calls that we were able to participate in Marion County. That really helped open my eyes to that process. We were able to actually interact on the phone, ask questions, dig a little bit deeper. We were even asked to go and find more information about possible changes, right? And then we brought that back to the team to talk about what that might look like. Other than that, so that's been my experience, I'm going to be honest with you. But what I would do here is, again, work with the board members and as the district about what is our legislative priorities, but I also would reach out to my mentors of superintendents that I have. I have a couple of them that would definitely mentor me, and work together to learn that process so that I am helping us as a school district advocate for what we need.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dudley.
Greetings. My general topic is leadership. And first question I have is describe an accomplishment you are most proud of in your career. Hey, it's
That's
heavy.
a hard one.
It's heavy.
Oh, that's a very, very difficult one.
Pick one.
Pick one. Okay, so I know I already mentioned this, but I'm going to say increasing opportunities for students. I know I already mentioned the middle school mathematics acceleration program. I know I mentioned the co-teaching. One of the other things that I've done is to help school leaders, and I did it myself as a principal, but looking at the offerings that we're offering, the course sections that we're offering to students. Are we offering all students the opportunity to take an advanced placement, not just AP, but an advanced coursework? So if you're in middle school, can all students take sixth grade advanced English? And I've done a lot of work in opening that up for students, because while they might have some challenges or some skill deficits, with the right supports, they can excel. They can be successful. So one of the things that I've brought forward in those situations is I've started an acceleration program where you train specific teachers, whether it's an instructional coach, a reading intervention teacher, a math intervention teacher, whomever it could even be a very skilled paraprofessional, and you train them on how to develop acceleration lessons before they get into class. So let's say, for example, it's a sixth grade student in advanced English language arts, and the teacher is planning for his or her instruction coming up, and it's a standard that this five students here are going to struggle with because they have some type of, they're lacking a prerequisite skill, right? So that we train these other personnel to then, during some small group instruction time, pre-teach some specific concepts that these students need. It could be the vocabulary, the domain-specific vocabulary that they're going to hear during Tier 1 instruction, but it could also be a prerequisite skill that they missed in an earlier grade. Or it could be just making that connection to what they already know. And I've launched that program, and what we have found is that the students, when they get into that Tier 1 instruction, because they had just a small little 20 to 30 minute mini lesson of acceleration, they've been more successful during that Tier 1 instruction. And so I'd have to go with that one.
Okay,
Mr.
that's good.
Dudley.
We have many or several quality finalists for this position. Why should the school board select you?
So that was in my closing statement, so I'm just going to do that
That's all right.
now, Mr. Dudley. So I think because, first of all, when I read those, as I mentioned earlier, I read those desired qualities, and they truly are genuinely everything that I believe and do. I just knew in my heart when I read them that I was a good fit. Now, you don't know that, right? But that's my job here, is to show you that. Here's the other thing. I have worked in various districts, and I think that gives me a unique ability, a unique skill, because you all have done phenomenal, and if I haven't said that enough, you guys should be very, very, very proud. It's a high-performing district. So you've done a lot of that great work. You're on a great trajectory and path. But when I've worked in these other different districts, I've learned different ways of work. I've learned different perspectives. I've learned different funding formulas. And so all of that I've learned over the course of working in 4 different districts, I feel like that gives me a certain skill set or perspective, so that when we're looking at this together in the future down the road, it's a good opportunity to be able to capitalize and build on that knowledge and continue that forward-thinking work that we've established here.
Sure. What is the most important part of superintendent's job and why?
So I'm going to say student success. It's all about the students. That's why I want to be a superintendent, is to help work with a board that's going to develop policies, systems, procedures, frameworks, so that all students have the opportunity to be successful. I believe that there's also going to be high accountability with that, and I should be held accountable. I would expect absolutely nothing less than to be held accountable. I need to be held accountable for student success. I believe that all students can learn, provided with the right supports, and all students need to experience different opportunities. I mentioned this a little bit earlier too. The education part, the curriculum, all of that is important, so that they have that skill set to do whatever it is that they choose. But it's also about the opportunities that education can provide. And so we know that our families have different abilities to provide those opportunities to their students. But we have the fortunate ability to provide that, and I feel that that's also part of their education, whether it's experiences in the theater or orchestra or fine arts, sports. I mean, think about how many students might not have that opportunity if they weren't going to a high school, right? And so the number one most important part of my job is going to be working with the board to making sure we have those systems in place so that our students in Pinellas County have exactly what they need to be successful.
Last question. We got time? Okay. Superintendent handles a variety of responsibilities. I apologize for my voice. This is an old coach's voice. My singing career is over. Well, it never started, but it sounds good. Which you feel is the most qualified, do you feel most qualified to handle, and why? And what areas will you need the most support?
I'm so sorry. Could you repeat that one more time?
You had to ask me that.
I
didn't
know. I apologize.
Which do you feel is the most qualified for you to handle, and why, of the responsibilities? And what areas do you think you'll need the most support in?
Oh, great question. I'm sorry, I just didn't catch it the first time.
That's all right. Well, the voice, I can understand.
I think 2 of the areas that I'm going to be the most strong in is curriculum instruction. That's been a passion of mine. I'm very strong there. I know how to provide coaching and feedback to adjust lessons for students in the Exceptional Student Education Program, ELL students. That's going to be one of my strengths. One of my other strengths is communication. I am definitely a people person. I ask a lot of questions so that I understand, so that I know what people's perspectives are, so I understand what they're saying. I ask a lot of those clarifying questions. So communication is another one of my definite strengths. In regards to where am I going to need the most support, I think that's going to be twofold. One, it's going to be navigating the superintendency. I haven't done that yet. And just like a teacher or brand new principal, you don't know what you don't know until you're in that spot, right? But I believe, based on what I know of each of you and what I've heard, I know that each of you would support me in that role and helping me to do that. I'm a very quick learner, so I don't see it as a challenge. The other the other thing that I have is I definitely would be open to training with FSBA, school board member training, the superintendency training, things like that. I absolutely love school. So I'm open to that opportunity. But I also have mentors out there in superintendents. I actually know several superintendents. I've worked with them in Orange County many, many years ago. So I have mentors that can also guide and lead me when I have questions. And I'm not afraid to ask questions. Like I said, I will tell you if I don't know something, but I'm going to learn it and I'm going to find out.
We're going to have 4 minutes left. So are there any additional information that you would like to share with the board members?
So is this my closing time?
This is the
Okay.
closing.
So all right. So first of all, thank you for today and these great questions. I love to think critically. I really do. And you had some really good questions there. You did definitely make me think critically. One of the other things that I did want to share with you is that I know the superintendent role will be it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of work. I am a hard worker. I have an incredible work ethic. My dad, as I mentioned, was a Navy man, so he taught that to me very, very well. But I'm one of those that I have hobbies, but I don't do a lot with them because I'm constantly reading or thinking or processing. And I value my family time, but even when I'm with my family, my mind is oftentimes thinking or processing. In fact, my daughter often can see on my face when I'm thinking, and she says, "Mom, how's your staff meeting going?" So I'm definitely not afraid of the hard work. I fully expect that, and I welcome that. As I mentioned, I've had the opportunity to work in various districts, and I think that gives me a unique perspective to help bring on and just kind of strengthen that. That's really taught me a lot. I've really grown, and looking at it's helped me become an innovative thinker about let's look at this differently, right? The other thing I would like to share with you is. I've led that elementary and education department, and it's got multiple other layers underneath of it, and that has provided me some great opportunities. I think one of the roles that has prepared me the most for the superintendent role is the role of school associate superintendent and area superintendent, because in these roles, I have been able to walk schools, be in the field, work with school leaders side by side. I've been able to engage with teachers. And what that's done for me is it's given me the firsthand knowledge. I can see the work happening. So when we create all of these district initiatives and projects, I can see it happening at the school level and at the classroom level. And that perspective, I think has really prepared me for the superintendent role, because what that does for me is it gives me the opportunity to see any barriers or any challenges so that we can make some adaptations or change, but it also allows me to see the successes and recognize at that moment those successes to that school, but also build on those successes. So if this particular initiative is working and I can see that success, how can we capitalize on that on the next one? And so that really has afforded me the opportunity to see how we roll out the work, if you will. And I know I've already mentioned communication as well. I would expect us to be daily. So really, I don't know how many minutes I have.
Well, we're going to wrap it up, but go ahead.
Oh, okay, sorry. So I'm going to leave you with my superintendent entry plan. And what this is that it's about 100 days. It's 3 phases. The first phase actually begins with a pre-entry plan, a pre-entry phase. I'm one of those that I want to hit the ground running. I want to start building those relationships. And each phase has some intentional key activities outlined for me to start learning and building relationships. And it also has a reporting out feature so that I'm reporting to you, the board, and holding myself accountable. And it finalizes with a culminating task that isn't specifically outlined yet, but I welcome the opportunity to share collectively with me as the board, or if you all wanted to select a representative, I'd love to have the opportunity to share out to the public the lessons that we learned during during that superintendent plan. So I thank you very much for having me here. I wish the very best for Pinellas.
Thank you for your interest and your participation in the process. You've had a full day today with interviews and meet and greets with the administration, and now at 6 o'clock you will have meet and greet with the community. Tomorrow you will meet individually with each board member for a one-on-one interview. And finally, please let FSBA staff know if you have any concerns or questions. So thank you.